and please welcome Frank Velasquez Jr.
All right, so I got a monitor, so I'm like, I know I have the videos on me, so I'll try. I'm so used to moving up and down in the room, so I gotta be a little bit more conscious of that. So I can still have some level of movement. Okay, thank you. Well, I want to first off start off by saying thank you, Scott, for inviting me. I actually was going to be doing a presentation that obviously, hopefully there's no pressure. I'm the first in person in like 2+ years. But Julie had actually invited me 2 years ago, and I was going to do a completely different topic. And then the pandemic happened, and so then it was canceled. And so, and then that summer, George Floyd was murdered. And that had a huge impact. So I was going to give, and I did give this particular presentation, not this one. It was around storytelling and story art for a conference that I typically speak at. And I ended up giving it, but I was like, we have to do more. And I wanted to do more sessions around my passion. And my passion is around racial equity, gender equity, social justice. And so fast forward a year, and they asked me to do the conference again. And I said, yeah, but I'm not doing that other session. I said, I want to do a session around equity. And they said, yes, we want you to do that. And so this is where I debuted this. So that's kind of the story behind that. So I'm very happy to be here, very, very excited as well. So I don't have control of so who's going to advance it for me?
Ori has control of the screen, so she is.
And you'll advance it for me here?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and advance it. Okay. All right, so I'm not seeing it advanced. Okay. Yeah, but how about here? These aren't advanced.
Oh, so this is.
And if I have the control here, I can go ahead and do it myself.
I think if you just share the Zoom, actually, that might be easiest. So if you click on the
Technical difficulties.
here, and then if you drag it up to the chat.
Can you all see the screen okay? Is it the lighting?
Yeah, and it's over here too.
Okay.
All right,
But with like
The lighting's
light
better.
lines.
Yeah. We'll work on a couple of things, but we've got you for now.
Okay, cool. All right, so this is where we're going to be going over today. So we're going to be talking about these 5 things: the power of narrative, the cost of deficit frame narratives, and going from deficit frame language to asset-based language. And then we're going to finish it up with talking about the importance of empathy and then empathy to action. All right, so now we can move forward to the next one.
You got even like 30 more seconds, Frank.
There we go. All right, so go ahead and advance the next 2, I think. It should be, yep, and go ahead and go to the next, and the next, sorry. All right, so I know there's a lot of words up there, but I'm gonna start off by doing a land acknowledgement. I'm gonna read the first part of it, and then I'm gonna ask for a volunteer to read the second part of it. So we honor the tribal nations who have served as caretakers of this land from time immemorial and respectfully acknowledge the ancestral homelands of the Tona O'odham Nation and the multi-millennial presence of the Pascua Yaqui tribe within Pima County. We also honor the vast and often unrecognized contributions and sacrifices of Indigenous people and are conscious of the ongoing experience of inequality and political invisibility. Lara, why don't you go ahead and read the second half of that?
These Americas are built upon violence and erasure, and we bring these histories with us. Those native to the land, Indigenous people from other territories, as well as white settlers by conquest, and those of us who have come here by force, or otherwise as a result of slavery, colonialism, imperialism, and ongoing wars. When we enter spaces like this, we must bring these histories into view. With this knowledge, we meet here in the hopes of making a different world.
Thank you. So that's our land acknowledgement for Pima County. In regards to narratives, why do we have land acknowledgements? And anybody can answer this. Why do we have, or have started to really start to do land acknowledgements?
To fit in.
to fit in?
Be honest, there's a lot of folks who actually don't have anything behind it. They're just actually trying to make sure that they can fit in with the rest of the collective and kind of mask their solidarity lack of.
Okay, thank you, Anton. Any other reasons? Why are we starting to do land acknowledgements?
To recognize we're all on stolen land.
Say that one more
We're
time,
on
Paul.
stolen land.
We're on stolen land to recognize.
Ignored that for so long. Some people-
Right. Go ahead and advance. Thank you, Colleen. Thank you, Anton. Go ahead and advance one. So what have we been taught before these land acknowledgements? What narrative did we hear in history? And anybody, again, can say anything. What did we hear in regards to this land that we're on?
Not much before white people.
Not much before white people? Okay, thank you, Deb. Anthony?
Yeah, there were these nice explorers who came looking. It was very centric on the people who benefited from this local discovery. And
Land was discovered. Absolutely.
Discovery, yeah, and without the perspective of the impact centered.
Right. Anybody add to that? Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Deb. So land was discovered. What other narratives did we learn growing up?
And what an amazing thing that.
What was that?
And what an amazing thing that the white people did for people that they encountered. It was really a gift.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else? Yes, Scott.
The phrase manifest destiny.
Yes, that was in my head right now.
This was always to be for us.
Manifest destiny, yes. We're,
I was just gonna add that in talking about indigenous folks, it tends to be in the past, like they're no longer here, no longer part of the story.
right. So thank you also. Essentially, there is a power in narrative. And what are some positive pieces of a powerful narrative? I mean, y'all are kind of fundraisers, so what are some positives of creating a powerful narrative?
We inspire people to action.
Inspire people to action. Thank you, Julie. What else?
Reach someone's emotions in their heart.
Reach someone's emotions in their heart. Absolutely. Thank you, Em. Are there negative consequences or negative pieces of powerful storytelling as well? Yeah, y'all literally just told me. So what happens if you skip now to the next one? Next slide. Sorry.
No, thank you for your patience.
No worries.
First time doing it in this space, too.
And Ori, you can advance one slide as well, or two slides. There we go. So as we just said, when there's the historical narratives that nonprofits have shared and have told have historically been singular. So you hear one narrative and it's been perpetuated for at least 100 years. And they're often stereotypical, which means it's like, I'll say it in the sense of like, it's often connected, like the issues of the country are connected to the people experiencing the difficulties. And it's not connected to the systems that have created that. Those in combination make it a deficit framed narrative. And there's a danger in deficit framed narratives because our brain works a certain way. So go ahead and go to the next one. So because we're kind of raised through the history of man and humankind, we tend to rely on our instincts. It keeps us safe, it keeps us alive, and that is just something our brain automatically does. When we come into contact with new people, it's just something that our brain does. However, what it also does is we don't take time to think. So you got that 5% where we're not rationalizing things. We're not logically thinking through things. We tend to make rash judgments, and that's just how the brain works. And when our brain works a certain way, it tends to go in a certain direction. I'm going to tell you 3 things that it does. So go ahead and skip to the next. So I want to share with you, contrary to popular opinion, your gut isn't always right. As I just described, our brain automatically makes judgments. It's something that it just does. It keeps us safe, keeps us alive. But as I said, it creates this framing, and it's a combination of 3 things. Go ahead and go to the next. All right, go ahead and hit one more. There we go. All right, so as I said, and we just described, the first thing that it does, or the first thing that our brain does, is that it favors speed over accuracy. So I want to be clear on that. So again, when our brain is in intuitive mode, we're favoring speed over accuracy, and that alone starts to create a bias. So now you combine that with the next thing. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Go ahead and hit one more. The second thing is something called negative bias phenomenon. And if you can read that. So we hear all these positive things, and then somebody says something negative. That tends to be the only thing we hear. So that's traumatic events. We tend to remember them more than positive events. When we're getting feedback, maybe at our jobs, and then we hear all the great things, but we remember the one bad thing. Insults over praise. This is, again, just something our mind naturally does. Okay, so let's go to the next one. The next thing is something called the fundamental attribution error. And Julie, why don't you go ahead and read that if you can?
Read the comment?
Yes.
Okay, this is, one that says, why are you always so anxious to criticize me? And then what's the other, Lucy says, I just think I have a knack for seeing other people's faults. What about your own faults? I have a knack for overlooking them.
And so we tend to do that. Again, our brain automatically, so if something happens in our life that is negative, we tend to blame our circumstances. Well, car broke down, whatever. But when we see it in somebody else, we tend to blame it on their characteristics. We tend to say, oh, well, you should have woken up earlier. You should have done this, you should have done that. When our brain automatically jumps into that. So now if you combine these three things, go to the next slide. The fundamental, it creates a perfect storm. You've got your fundamental attribution error, your negative bias phenomenon, and then the way that our brain favors speed over accuracy. You put all those together, our brain creates this perfect storm where we're creating a narrative that uses deficit frame language, or narratives that use deficit frame language, blames those who are left behind for their predicament, rather than the policies and practices that perpetuate oppressive and inequitable systems. So again, mind you, so now we're writing all of these things, we're using certain language and we're writing in a certain way, because of the way our brain works, it's automatically creating this perfect storm where it's creating this, it's perpetuating this cycle. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, so these are some examples of deficit frame language. Colleen, why don't you read the first column?
At-risk youth, underprivileged, vulnerable, low-income minority.
And Catherine, why don't you go ahead and read the second?
ex-con, disabled people, disadvantaged youth, poor communities, homeless people.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask a question. And mind you, there's no right or wrong, well, maybe there is a wrong answer, but let's just play along. So tell me what you think, let's go one by one. At-risk youth, why might that be deficit frame?
It focuses on the at-risk part, not the youth part.
Right, and so because it's an adjective, it connects the two together. Youth are at risk, so at-risk youth. And then because of the way our brain works, it automatically connects the two. Thank you. Underprivileged.
I would say it sets up privilege as the standard against which everything else is measured.
Yep. Underprivileged. Who's creating that standard? Thank you, Julie. Vulnerable. And vulnerable can be a tricky one, but vulnerable, why do you think that might be deficit frame?
It almost shows like I guess, I read into like a powerlessness or weakness.
Yes. Vulnerable, yeah, it's weakness. And yes, there's power in being vulnerable in other ways, but it's in the context of a certain way in regards to our writing around describing the populations that we work with. It can be absolutely, it's deficit. Thank you. Low income. Yes, Pam.
I'm just noting for all of these, there's there's a less than connotation for every single one.
Yeah, less than, yeah. So low income, and I've had questions about low income, whether or not that, again, it depends on context, but if it's a loan, it can, again, it can tend to be deficit frame. Thank you, Em. Minority, kind of along the lines of what Em just said, minority.
Like you're marginalized.
Marginalized. And is it truly a minority if, you know, there's a majority? Ex-con.
Focusing on what they were, not what they could be, right?
Right. And we don't know what
Right.
again, the systems that put them in that space. And again, when we hear ex-con, our brain automatically thinks, whoa, you know, so it's again, it's how we use that language. Thank you, thank you. Oh, go back. Disabled people. Yes.
I think it's the same as like at risk. I mean, if you're putting that term first, that's why a teacher, we often said, the students with, you know, you're looking at the disabled.
Yep.
First,
Yep.
not recognizing them.
And that'll go for the next, so I won't go through all, so that goes for the next three as well. Disadvantaged youth, it's used as an adjective. Poor communities, again, not talking about why their area is under-resourced. And homeless people, and again, it's being used as an adjective. All right, so let's go to the next one. All right, here's one of my favorite slides. So success is, well, actually, let's have Anthony read it.
Success is determination mixed with hard work and grit.
All right, so anybody see a problem with that? And if you do, okay, I hear a lot of, all right, so charm. So tell me what bothers you about that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. And like hard work, you could work really hard and still not benefit or get the promotion or move up. So it's not always determined on hard work. Yeah, that's what made me get into my mind. Sometimes it doesn't matter what a person does. That doesn't always make it to where they're gonna do.
Right. Thank you, Charlie. I heard some over on this side. So let's Martin. Thoughts on that phrase?
I think you're making up that word. It's just tied into the mythology of beliefs about higher bootstraps.
Yep.
And when we talk about context, and the more it's revealed of the formalized obstacles that are put up for different people, the more it undermines really that everybody has that equal opportunity to be financially successful in America. And that's really what we're talking about here is reframing mythology here with the facts that it doesn't apply to everybody.
Right. Thank you, Martin. All right, we can go to the next slide and I'll just kind of pretty much reframe what y'all said. So what the problem with those phrases, hard work and grit, is that it promotes deficit thinking, as we said, because they situate the responsibility of success or the predicament of failure on the individuals. Again, not looking at the system itself. It avoids naming how systemic structures operate to ensure that some people fail while others succeed. And this is the part that really bothers me. So it fuels a system of shame management with minoritized individuals who strive and beat the odds, and they're being treated as exceptional, while the majority of them are viewed as deficient. You know, that happens so many times where somebody's, you know, hey, and then everybody looks, well, they did it. So yeah, so it really perpetuates the mythology, as Martin said. All right, we can go to the next. So basically, words matter. You know, the way we talk, the way we say, the way we communicate, the way we write, the way we engage other people, our words truly matter. And if we go to the next slide, we're going to do a little activity. Oh, actually, yeah, let me go ahead and go through this first. So, as I said, we're trying to move from a deficit framed approach to an asset-based approach. And so really, here's what we're looking at. Three pretty much strong things is when it's deficit framed, the focus is on the shortcomings. When it's asset-based, you're focusing on strengths, aspirations, inspirations, on the individuals versus focusing on what they don't have or what the community does not have. The second thing that we look at, gotta look at my notes, make sure I get it right. Is that it connects systemic disparities with the systemic causes, as I said earlier. As-based language really connects those instead of looking at the individuals or blaming the individuals for the predicaments that they're in and not looking at the situations or the systems that created those deficiencies or gaps. And the last thing that as-based language does as well is it empowers communities themselves to create the change in their communities. It also moves it away from viewing people who need the services as being deficient or recipients of charity, and instead you're empowering them in their own communities. And I've seen this, well, actually I do want to share a story. If I have enough time. Okay, so this one's hard for me to share because even looking back on it, I'm like, oh. So when I was at JobPath, we didn't have a development person, but I fancy myself a pretty good writer, so I started to do the writing. Then we hired somebody, after my second year, we hired somebody to be our development person. And so we had already written our donor appeal letter. I had written the ones before. The one we had the year prior, we kept the person anonymous. We shared some of the difficulties, especially being undocumented, without saying they were undocumented, because they were a DACA student, and then came in college, raised the tuition, well, the state did, tripled the tuition for international students. So fast forward a year, now we have a director of development. We interviewed our person. We had asked her, hey, can we use your real name? She said, yeah, that was fine. She wrote the story. Our director of development wrote the story. We put it forward and mind you, I kind of was out of the loop, but I'm the leader, so this is why it still affects me, is we never got final approval from the person to read it, and we sent it out, and it was filled with deficit frame language. And this was, mind you, before I knew what that was, and she was devastated. She didn't like the letter. She had a lot of pain. She was a student. Other students had seen the letter, and so they were talking to her about it, and it affected her schooling. And it sits with me, it's just like, we got to do better. So I apologized to her, of course, and just really made a commitment to doing things better, especially not letting things fall through the crack, but certainly looking how we write. How are we uplifting are the people that we work with, or are we unintentionally pushing them down? And that was the part that really sits with me, that I'm just like, we can't do that. And mind you, I'm not saying you all do it, but if you really relook at some of your work, you might find some things in there that are like, oof, why did I write it that way?
I just want to note that in just like donor centrism has been best practices for so long, this deficit-based language has been best practice in the nonprofit sector for so long, because of this idea of like, you have to use deficit-based language in order to make your case
Yes.
for the funding, right?
Yes.
So this is like, we really do have to reframe things so that we're not
Yes.
using that as a crutch.
Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. That's exactly what it is. This conference that I speak at, this session ran counter to the number of the sessions they had. And it was exactly for that reason, making the donor the hero. I don't know if you've ever heard that, but when you make the donor the hero, it often comes at the expense of those who you're working with. And so how do you uplift? How do you train? How do you change that narrative, offer another narrative to that, so you're not pushing those who you work with down? Thank you, Julie. That's absolutely critical. And that's the challenge we face.
Can you said you apologized to the student. Is there anything else that you might share that helped maybe kind of repair that, or maybe it was irreparable, but is there,
that's a fair question. They were pre-nursing, and they ended up failing out, so I'm not saying what we did was, because this was in December, so this semester was nearly over, but to not think that it contributed, I'd be dumb not to say that. So I've kept in touch with her now and then, but she was angry. And so I needed to give her the space. And so, yeah, but my job is to make sure that doesn't happen again. And that's why I speak to you all. So you all understand that as well. It's how we write, how we look at those pieces. But it was hard. It was hard calling. So for sure, it was a heavy learning, and especially for the director of development as well, to make sure that we get the sign off. And certainly even if we get the sign off, there's still the piece where we weren't in a space to really look at the language we were using, and she still could have put a sign off on it, and it still could have came out the way it came out. So yeah, it's hard. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one. All right, so now's our activity, and that's why we put the note card. So if you don't have pen or paper, please let me, I think we can find some. I know we got note cards, pens, I think everybody has one. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna look at 4 mission statements, and I want you to identify the deficit frame language in each of the following statements, and then change each mission and value statements using asset-based language. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next one and hit 1. All right, so the first one is our mission is to give voice to the voiceless. So go ahead, take a couple minutes, write down how you might change it, and then I'll ask for some volunteers. How are we doing on the chat box? Anything come up?
No questions yet.
You said yes?
No questions.
Okay.
Though they did ask if you could send the slides out.
Okay. I think they're gonna do that for sure. All right. Any volunteers who would love to volunteer how they might change? So, 2 things. Point out what you feel is the deficit framed word or words, and then how you rewrote it.
So I think the deficit is the voiceless part, because everyone already has a voice. I think what's missing is like the piece about allowing everyone's voice to be heard. So I said our mission is to ensure that everyone's voice is heard.
I like that. Thank you. Any other ones that want to share theirs? Martin.
I'm asking, because this is a challenge for me. It might be generational, honestly. To me, at-risk youth is the context. So I'm learning.
Okay.
So it's really a power dynamic if you give somebody a voice. So that part is also deficit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the assumption is there's somebody giving, oh, you don't have this, I'm giving it to you.
Right.
And as Charm said, they already have it. They just don't have a venue in order to.
So I wrote that our mission is to add voices to the conversation.
I think that would work.
They're not new voices, they're not, in fact, they exist. I wrote something about sharing first, but.
Thank you,
Does that
Mark.
make sense?
Yes. Any others in regards to like keywords maybe they use? You don't have to read your whole mission statement.
This is stronger language, but I put, our mission is to empower those who have been silenced. So that puts hey, it wasn't just that they're just voiceless, that they've been silenced.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. Any other ones on this side?
I use the verb to amplify.
Amplify. Thank you. And what was your first name?
Carrie.
All right.
I just feel like if this is a mission statement, I don't have a clue what the organization actually does. It could be for animals. I mean, animals don't have so.
Especially if they're rabbits. And mind you, these are just general statements for practical purposes, but thank you, Polly. All right, let's go to the next one. Or were there any that did it in the
Yes,
chat box?
yeah, in the chat, Veronica said a reframe of language could be uplift or to honor voices. And Ori said, we work with our community to make space for all voices to be heard.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next one, and I'll make sure I ask the chat box as well. All right, so we provide at-risk youth with jobs in order to prevent them from committing crime.
We are, we're done.
All right, so take a couple of minutes, change it up, and then same thing I'll ask. What are the words that seem deficit frame? And then what's your mission statement? Some are like that.
Yeah.
All right, I see some pen starting to go down. So from our live in-person people, volunteer to point out the deficit frame language, word or words, and then your improved mission statement.
I'll go because I really struggle with the at-risk youth. That is a word that we use. So that's the problem right now here on that sentence, also with the committing crimes. So the way I wrote it is, we provide our young generation jobs and new opportunities to succeed in life. But still, I'm not happy with how to replace at-risk youth.
All right, and I have a word that even Goodwill uses, so I'll kind of share that.
Okay.
Really quick, thank you, that was great. Really quick, funny story. I did this session and there was a foundation in Texas, and they were called Underserved Communities Foundation. And she goes, what do I do? It's in your name, I don't know. Anyway, all right, so thank you. Any other ones? So the deficit frame words, and then your mission statement.
Well, I would agree that the same words were, at-risk and committing crimes, and I just didn't even address that really, and then I was wordsmithing, but it's provide jobs, to expand opportunities and skills for youth.
Great.
And just very generic, it didn't even address where it's.
Well, what is it connecting, first of all? What is it connecting when you read what you read, Catherine?
Crimes and youth.
Right, crimes are being committed by at-risk youth. All right, and Scott, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I think like the only word that's not that is space might be in. Even the word prevents, I mean, even if you took prevents out of the awful context of what follows it, it's still not really talking about what this organization can do. I mean, we're thinking even about environmental organizations that are trying to, prevent, further climate change and things like that. It would still be more beneficial to talk about what, in a positive way, what you are doing, not just what you're not doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Anton and then Deb.
If you don't mind.
So Deb and then Anton. Go ahead, Deb.
No, okay, so, no, I'm not going to, yeah, I do think that people like to be part of something positive, and I do think part of the negativity of deficit-based language is like, the news is bad enough, and it just, I just think focusing on the positive, but, So I agree, I think that whole thing is, you know, if you're a poor person, you're obviously gonna be a criminal, right? I mean, like, that's just what, that's what that
That's what it's
says.
saying, yeah.
So I said, nurturing the untapped potential in our community's youth.
Thank
Because
you.
I think that, again, it's systemic, right? If places are under-resourced or there is an opportunity because the system, oh, and I didn't put anything about voting in here, but I think voting and elections are really important to sort of like address all of the, you know, this systemic stuff.
Thank you, Deb. Go ahead, Anton.
Yeah, so as Scott pointed out, there's probably, the "we" is the only positive term in there. And I feel that Black and brown communities that were part of the activist generation and previous generations, while a lot of white families were able to amass generational wealth, that they are now being able to enact and use that as gentrification, meaning our next generation of Black and brown people will be a part of what was once the working class jobs, is a negative term, meaning that they will have to then be paying back to the future generation of landlords, which is the white folks that were working classes and will be renters. So what we actually are doing now in the Black and brown community is waking ourselves up to the fact that jobs is potentially a deficit for us. And so, as everyone's already highlighted the sentence other than "we," I kept the "we," are committed to offering a pathway to youth who are an essential piece of our community's future.
Like that. Thank you. All right, one or two from the chat box.
Yes,
Thank you,
Veronica said we empower a path to employment, and Sarah said we provide a space for youth to empower themselves by exploring different career paths.
Great improvements. Thank you, Sarah, and who was the other one?
Veronica.
Veronica. Thank you, Sarah and Veronica. All right, let's go to the third. We seek to reduce minority dropout rate and end the minority dropout crisis. So again, what's the deficit framed word or words? And then your subsequent improved mission. All right. We're ready to move. All right, so volunteers, again, first thing, identify the deficit frame word or words, and then your improved statement. Go ahead, Catherine.
Everything after "we," I think. But I have a question. The word "seek" kind of bothers me because it seems a little unnecessary. You don't look to do something, you're either doing it or you're not doing it as far as these statements go. So I just took that out completely and just kind of changed the thought to empower rather than reduce.
Okay.
Empower communities to build on foundations of learning. So taking out the whole minority idea and drop out link and all of that is just bad, but more removing the striving and the seeking and the trying to more of an action.
Okay.
Rather than looking to do something good, you're actually doing something
Okay,
good.
say that last part of it again.
So what I took out was the idea of looking to do something good, but just doing something good instead. So empowering a community to build on foundations of learning rather than suggesting that there's a negative learning gap
No, I like
in this
that.
community.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Any other ones? Yes, sir, Martin?
Can we simply say raise graduation rates for the entire community?
Bingo. Yep. Let's focus on graduation rates, or, you know, the minority dropout crisis. Thank you, Martin. Anybody else? Yes.
Well, I have seen, but when I wrote it, I agree with you. I said that word is unnecessary. So I wrote, we provide great resources and opportunities to encourage successful graduation.
You know, it's literally flipping, focus on the graduation, not the dropouts.
Right. I see where you're going and I really like it.
You see where I'm going?
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But
All right.
it's really a different mind shift. I mean,
It
I've been in
is.
this field for 30 years, so this is so hard for me because this has been so ingrained in us, especially as grant. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's really hard for us old timers.
You know, even, I've only been in nonprofit since 2017, but it's still, I mean, you're right. In that conference I was at, just a really quick side story, I had like a line of people afterwards say it's similar to what you said. And I say this because I'm a man of color. It was a line of white people, you know, that they came up to me and were like, I had no idea my language was problematic. And they were committed to looking at what they wrote before and making the changes. So that's what I'm trying to do out here. Let's do a couple from the chat box.
Yeah, Sarah said, we increase positive engagement between youth and their school communities, thereby increasing the graduation rate.
Nice. Thank you. All right, so let's go on to our final one. Go ahead and skip to the next one. Okay, so this one might be a little tricky because I've heard it already by some of y'all, but the communities we serve are strong and powerful. This one's a little bit more, it's not immediate what might be problematic or might be devastating.
I have a question.
Sure.
As to how this could be a mission statement, because if a community is already strong and powerful, what is the service being provided here? Exactly. And like.
Don't get hung up on that.
It also-
So it's a generalized statement, but there are some that are similar to this, so just try to find the problematic or deficit framed words. There's my hint, it's one word. And then kind of see how you can change it. But thank you, Catherine, you're right, it's very generalized. All right, since it's pretty short and sweet, okay, so volunteers, what might be that deficit frame word and how might you change it? Any volunteers?
Word serve seems.
Serve, okay.
problematic.
All right, so how would you change that word?
If it's true, I would maybe use partner and working in partnership with, but a lot of it's not true.
Thank you, Karen. Catherine.
Is support an appropriate word to replace that with, or is it the same thing?
It's better.
Okay.
So thank you, Catherine. Martin?
All right.
Your mic is
I'm
loud.
just taking a risk here, all right?
You see the mic on Martin.
So I'm saying that strong and powerful are deficit-based language because it's associated with certain male physical stereotypes in which you are praising those as the contributions to the community, which traditionally it might be, versus what we've been talking about. We don't say people are disabled or even different, well, we say they're different, they have different contributions, which is what we're trying to say here, that they're not deficit because, this is what they are. So I'm reading this as the communities we serve are valuable, or the communities we serve, contribute, something of that nature in which we are not associating traditionally physical male aspects to what they bring.
I hear you.
Thanks for throwing me on the lifeline.
Yeah, I hear you.
I'm trying to participate.
No, you're good. This is new. So thank you, Martin. And then I'm gonna expand on the serve, that word serve. So go ahead, Em.
I want to just check in with the group about the word disabled, because working with Direct Center for Independence, they trained us that you say people living with a disability, that you don't use euphemisms, you don't say alternately able, you don't say these things that are not the thing. So I just want to check in that that's what they trained us to say.
Yeah, and it's really flipping it again, not putting it as an adjective. But I've also heard, because I did this session for a healthcare nonprofit in Northern California, and they told me, and again, it's what the individual, how they want to be described as well. So you're playing a couple of things. So yes, with disabilities is usually the framed language, but then there's going to be individuals within that or communities within that may not even like that, and so they may want something different. So yes to what you said, and also paying attention to how somebody individually likes to be described. And I know that doesn't always come into our context if we're writing a grant, but if you're talking with certain individuals, they want to be referred to in the way they want to. So yes. All right, so I'm gonna go on the word serve. So what does serve, what does it kind of connotate?
Power dynamic.
Yeah.
So power dynamic, yes. And so I've often got, it's like, well, we serve our communities. So alternate words, and I'll just say it, and it's gonna show up anyway in a couple of minutes. Work with, collaborate with, partner with. I don't know if you've noticed me saying that, and mind you, this is a hard one even for me when I talk about the communities I work with. So it's just a simple change of language where you're removing that power dynamic. And it is hard. So I'm not even gonna joke, it's hard because I'll accidentally blurt it out sometimes. But it's something, again, it's not up there, it's the 95% versus the 5%. So it's just making sure I slow down and I'm using my logical brain to say what I need to really actually say. Yes.
I think that's the word charity too, right? Like, it's like we are the magnanimous ones who will take our time to, look down upon the peons. It's such that power imbalance that even the word charity, I have a problem with. Like, our work isn't charitable.
Right. Thank you, Deb. Thank you.
But Frank, you're also running into trouble with different nonprofits. If you're a faith-based nonprofit and your whole point of life is service, or whatever that language is, it's almost a reverse power dynamic where you feel you're leading from behind.
Well, it's
Or
context.
You're elevating.
Right, so that's where context plays, and I'm not knocking faith-based, but that also is similar to the problem about nonprofits, is that narrative has been created over time. So yes to what you're saying, and also acknowledging that there's still problematic things within that. So it depends on the institution, depends on the faith-based institution, how they want to handle that. But even service could be like, what if you're literally serving a community with food, the food bank. So we serve X amount of, so again, it's context. So the context is going to play a big role in this. The most important thing is just understanding what you actually do at the organization, and and are you accidentally implying a power dynamic? Thank you, Mark. Were there anybody in the chat box?
Yes, Ori said patronizing, not sure. Almost like we serve implies that they can't help themselves.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so go ahead and let's go to the next slides. And we'll go through this quickly. I know we got 10 minutes now. So first one was our mission is to give voice to the voiceless. Go ahead and click it again. So I said amplify the voices in our community. So Carrie, you did hit that word amplify. Again, it's the voiceless part. Take that out. All right, next one. We provide at-risk youth with jobs in order to prevent them from committing crimes. And then my example was, we connect, and here's the word, you were looking for an alternate to at-risk. We connect high opportunity youth to paid internships with viable career paths. So Goodwill uses that term, high opportunity or opportunity. All right, next one. We seek to reduce minority dropout rates and end the minority dropout crisis. Go ahead and click the next. Again, graduation, we just work with students to prepare them for graduation. All right, last one, which I already said. Communities we serve are strong and powerful. Click. The communities we collaborate with are strong and powerful. All right. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. I feel like I might have to go through this pretty quickly. We got 9 minutes. So we may have to skip the activity. All right, so who have I not picked on? Norma. So Norma, why don't you go ahead and read that quote for me, if you can see it.
Yeah. Empathy is a righteous struggle to sense someone's emotions, to understand and share the feelings of someone else, and to walk in someone else's shoes.
All right, so what does that mean to any of you? Empathy is a righteous struggle to sense someone's emotions, to understand, share, walk in someone else's shoes.
It's basically like making yourself pause for a second to think about how that person feels and what it would be like to experience life from their vantage point.
No, bingo. I mean, even if you don't personally experience it, you know, trying to get in that space of how they might be feeling. Yes, Wayne?
Take the focus off yourself.
Bingo, take the focus off yourself. You're all writers, you're all grant writers, what you write. We tend to start writing in our style without really thinking on the outskirts of who you're writing about. As I share with my story, still struggle with that. You know what I think I do? I really want to do this. Can we do like maybe a couple minutes after? Is everybody okay in here? Just, I'll be fast with it, but I think the next activity is going to hit with what Charm and Wayne just said. So let's go to the next slide. Oh, back up one to describe us. Okay, so again with your thing here, and we'll be really quick with this. I want you to look at this photo, try to notice details about the person. I want you to objectively focus on their external features and appearance of the person. Very quickly, write one sentence describing the age, gender, and mood of this person. So again, look at it objectively. Age, gender, general mood of this person. I'll take 2 minutes. All right, so again, I'm going to move really quickly, and I apologize, but I'm conscious of your time, but I wanted to at least get you an idea of what this activity is about. So quickly, a volunteer in our space, right? What was your sentence? Go ahead.
15-year-old female with a thoughtful mood.
Okay, thank you. 15-year-old female, thoughtful mood. Wayne?
This tween looks optimistically thoughtful.
This tween looks optimistically thoughtful. Look at a writer. You know he's a writer. Thank you. All right, one more. How about from the chat box? We got one from the chat box?
I don't have anything from the chat box.
Okay, so one more here. Anton.
The image of a young adult who's feminine, curious yet determined and being inquisitive.
Thank you. Anthony, since you had your hand up too.
I use the word solemn.
Solemn. Okay. All right, so now the next part's gonna be uncomfortable. Go to the next one. Can you advance it, Julie? Oh, wait, you did it. You did it. Okay, so it says, I want you to once again look at the photo. Try to feel what the person is feeling. Empathetically focus on the internal experience and feelings of this person. I'm not gonna lie, it's uncomfortable. So I want you to write one sentence describing the feelings and experiences of this person. Okay? So again, try to feel what they're feeling. I know some of you are still writing, so I don't want to disrupt that, but if there's anybody who has one, and I know it's hard, but would love for you to share. Go ahead.
I said the age in between where you're uncertain of yourself and your future.
I like that. Thank you, Devin. And the others?
I kind of go off my previous thought, where it started, but I said struggling with how they could get beyond the difficult situation. So kind of I'm feeling like that, maybe they're willing to go to the next level, and they don't have the money or the fight the support or what that could be.
Thank you. Let's do a couple more.
I feel like this person looks kind and deep, but a little maybe suspicious or aware.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
actually had a kind of the opposite feeling, like to me, I feel from that look, more of a sense of self and maybe more of a thoughtful contemplation of what's going on externally, not so much a questioning, like their eyes look very, like, not insecure, opposite of insecure, yeah, focused. That's a good word.
Thank you. Thank you. Any from the chat box?
Yeah, Ori says wary and unsure of what we want from them or what we'll do next.
So why do I do this exercise? And I know, again, I'm looking at my watch, but why do we do this exercise? Why do you think I do this exercise with you all?
I think you kind of shown that depending on your perception, you perceive it in a different way than the next person.
Right. And what does it cause you? What, based on what Charm and Wayne said before we did this exercise, what might be the benefit of looking at images or taking that pause? What might be the benefit?
I think to slow yourself down from the speed that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That immediate judgment.
How often do we're like, I need to find the right image, and you're looking for the one who, and why is it always a black or a brown kid or a brown woman who's abused? Why is it always those images? So absolutely, it's that pause where you're like, I need to stop and slow down and really see, am I uplifting, am I reclaiming those narratives?
Well, I think something that's important with this is I'm bringing biases or narratives with me to the image. And there's also just the body language, like she's peering kind of behind a wall or there's a structure there, she's closed off. So what does that communicate? The same girl in the same place in a different body, does it, this body language could communicate something. And then am I putting them in a light that's uplifting?
Right. All right, so I'm gonna move quickly through the next two because it's 9. So thank you all for that. I know sometimes it's not always comfortable. You are gonna get the slide, you are gonna get the slides for this. I know Scott, and so just so y'all know, you have to write all this down. But let's have Colleen read the first bullet point.
Accurately and respectfully talk about people's identities, situations, and roles in society.
Thank you. And let's have Deb read the second one.
Retire outdated and problematic phrases and metaphors.
Powwows, don't say that. Tribes, hey, let's get the tribe together. Third one, is it Mindy?
Talk about policies and solutions in realistic and accurate ways that spur the action that social justice advocates.
Thank you. Carrie, number 4. Lift up.
Lift up unity, participation, and cooperation over division, extreme individualism, and competition.
Absolutely. So again, we just keep reinforcing that. Just slow down. Are you uplifting the subject? If you're writing about something specifically, if you're not, then make sure we look them up. What was it, Amy?
Yes.
Amy, the last one.
Reinforce prosperity over scarcity.
Okay. Absolutely. All right, our final slide. And this is a part, and I purposely have this yellow one highlighted, but I'll read the other ones myself, interest of time. Deficit framed approaches exist everywhere. I mean, we've already talked about it here. They're everywhere. Explicitly point out the systems at work, past and present, that cause an individual struggle. So in your writing, let's call what it is. You know, it's yucky, but it's real. So in the best ways that you can, I know we sometimes report to higher ups, but in the best ways that you can, draw attention to those. Here's the most important one, I feel. The long-term harm of deficit-based language outweighs the short-term gains. We talk about that all the time. Well, I'm gonna make money if I use the donor as the hero story. Poverty still persists. So yeah, money's coming in, but is it changing what our country is or who the people we work with? No. So you can tell me that, and mind you, this is my, you know, when I was at that conference, because one of the guys told me that. He says, hey, but I'm getting money this way. But it's not changing the situation. It's still persisting. You get all the money you want, or they're getting all the money they want, but it still persists. Define people of color by their aspirations, not their challenges. And again, small changes in language can make a huge difference. Work with versus serve. Any opportunities in your writing where you can change some of these languages will change that narrative that plays in our head and when people are reading it. And that is it. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And just because we've not been able to feel satisfied in that way for a long time, can we get like another audible applause from the yeah, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. We will get everything out to you. Our next meeting is August 5th, which is the first week of the month, which I know is different from usual because of statewide conference stuff. So we'll get that stuff up on the website soon, as well as location, timing, and all of that stuff. But August 5th, put that on the calendars. Thank you all for coming, and it was really good to see you. And we do have to clear out of the room in the next 10 minutes or so, but we can all, you know, go chat and lobby and out front. We'll see you soon.
I didn't even.